Veronese's wonderful painting, The Wedding at Cana, is on the opposite wall. No one was looking at it. It's huge. It's like 33 feet long. It's this gigantic painting of motion and humor and humans. And right in the middle of it, it's a religious painting. It's about the New Testament story of Jesus turning water into wine at this wedding feast. But in the midst of all the tumult of that painting, there's this very Repose portrait of Jesus, who's just kind of looking on. And I'd been a little irritated at all these people on the other end as Mona Lisa was looking on in her enigmatic bemusement. And I just saw the figure of Jesus and the figure of Mona Lisa as opposite ends of the room, both looking on this massive humanity and all its silliness and, jostlingness. And it just really struck me that there was something about the equanimity of those two figures in those two beautiful paintings. So that's what sparked the thing. The very first time I saw Leonardo's painting, I wasn't even interested in it because I was a snarky college student, And, right? The Mona Lisa, it's a cultural cliche. It's a meme. Duchamp drew a mustache on her. I remember being a kid at 10 reading Mad Magazine and seeing Alfred E. Newman, the satiric doofus of Mad Magazine, as Mona Lisa. We've used that painting and I've used it and seen it so many times, and I just kind of stumbled upon it, and I just looked at it for a second. I thought, oh, she's not enigmatic, she's cracking up. She's a very sweet, self-possessed young woman, and she's kind of amused by all this attention. So that's been sort of my go-to sense of that painting and the persona of Mona Lisa. And Leonardo, he worked on that painting for years and years. I think he never even gave it to her family. He was so obsessed with it. So there's something about this young woman in repose, just kind of understanding her power, but also amused at this attention being paid by all these slack-jawed viewers, including the painter and us and me. So
I love the idea of her bemused acceptance alongside Jesus's calmer acceptance. There's something very lovely about these two figures that we have so much obsession with, just kind of taking that in and not feeling resentful.
What are we supposed to do as artists, as painters, as poets, as writers? But is to love, the world and to try to represent it in its fullness, which is absurd and terrifying and horrible and wonderful and beautiful and all of the above. And those two characters to me sort of embody that attitude that I think many artists that I value also do. For me, it's imperative. I've got a family member who's pretty ill, who has the favorite phrase of a political activist tattooed on his bicep that says, "Hope is a discipline," which just means it's, I think, something that we just don't wait for. We don't hope, we don't assume will descend upon us if we're lucky, but it's something we have to work on and work toward. It's a hard world. It's a hard world right now. And that poem was me trying to find moments of grace and beauty amidst the pandemic, political madness as I see it, and so forth. So, what's the alternative to being hopeful? Have been accused of by one daughter-in-law whom I love deeply. We have a great relationship, and she calls me Dad. But she says, this toxic positivity has to stop. And, she worries that, is optimism, is hope not seeing the full truth? So those are just issues I wrestle with as a writer. One thing you know as a teacher is you're not teaching curriculum, you're teaching human beings and all their beautiful and messy complexity. And I think that kind of attentiveness, that kind of trying to see the truth, the complex truth of things, and just getting in there and working at it every day. And those are characteristics I hope I was able to bring to my teaching that I hope I can bring to my writing. I think that's our job as writers, as teachers, as humans, to be open-hearted as we can. Doing literary criticism for me poses to my fellow teachers, here are 12 ways we can teach students to look for meaning. And so it's just posing this variety of possibilities for criticizing anything. Do we want to use that lens as a way to sort of think about this story? And, how does it treat a woman's perspective in this story? Do we want to use political criticism? Do we want to focus on formalist criticism, which is just, how does this poet use form to make meaning? I mean, there's so many things to think about with any rich piece of literature. So the impetus of that book was, let's teach our students that they can empower themselves to find the meaning in something for themselves. I definitely think hope is one. I mean, an issue for me as a born optimist is this whole, I wake up happy about waking up and looking forward to things. And sometimes I think that's at the expense of seeing things clearly or being sympathetic to people who aren't that way. It's interesting you ask that question, but I've read a ton about optimism and where it comes from and what it means to be a happy person. And we know people with an optimistic outlook are supposed to live longer and people like to hang around with them. And, there's a lot of benefits to it, but also the narrative that optimists tell themselves about life is probably far less true than the narrative that pessimists tell themselves about life. So I'm kind of interested in that whole idea of hope and optimism and its benefits and also the price it exacts from one's true view of the world. I mean, the idea, how can you see things truly and still have hope, is a big question for me. I fell in love as a kid with Robert Louis Stevenson and had read everything Mark Twain wrote by the time I was in 7th grade. And these days, right now, if you ask me who I'd want to invite to dinner, it would be Barbara Kingsolver, Louise Erdrich, those kind of great novelists. I'm just one of those people that's always got a book wherever I am. Waiting at the DMV yesterday, I was reading a volume of poetry and something by Percival Everett. So, there we go.